Well, I'm about tired of this weather, aren't you all? I mean, from what I've seen on social media, there's several people who have put that I am ready for spring to be here, or at least the weather to change and get better. And boy, it just makes you kind of depressed, the way the weather's been lately. You know, when Mickey and I used to occasionally go over to her mom and dad's house and something was bugging us, we'd get a little depressed or be griping about something. Mickey's mom always had a saying that she'd say to us. She'd say, well, tomorrow's going to be a brighter day. And that's the thing that she would say many times, and usually it worked to encourage us a little bit. And so maybe tomorrow will be a brighter day. But what I want to talk about is what we've been studying in the last quarter here was a couple of letters to a church in Thessalonica, that first and second Thessalonians that we've been studying. And I think if you really think about that, you have to realize that one of the themes of those two books is encouragement. Matter of fact, I've picked two verses for us to look at tonight in 1 Thessalonians. If you'll turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, we'll look at verse 18, and then we're going to look at 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 11 for just a minute. 1 Thessalonians 4:18 says, therefore encourage one another with these words. And then in 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 11, the very next chapter says, therefore encourage one another and build one another up just as you are doing. And the context of what's going on here is that the Thessalonian church, Paul had been visiting with them about Jesus going to return. And some of the brethren being kind of wondering about that. Matter of fact, wondering about their loved ones. If their loved ones had died, but Jesus hadn't returned yet, what's going to happen to those loved ones? And he explains to them what's going to happen when the Lord returns. And then he says, encourage one another. And that word's kind of interesting if you look at that one word. If some of you all have the King James Version, I think it says comfort one another in both of those sections. The word comfort in that time period came from a Greek word. It's a word that the Greeks would call parakaleo. And it literally meant to bring someone close to your side. Parallel. Kaleo, to call. Call someone close to your side. And so that's what he's trying to say. I want to comfort you. I want to parakaleo you. I want to call you close to my side. It had in mind that it was a person that would reach their arm around someone in comfort. And you know what I'm talking about. If someone wants to comfort you, sometimes they'll walk up to you and they'll put their arm around you and kind of pat you and say, I need to comfort you. It's used in the New Testament, that word, that specific word is used 114 times. When a word's used that much, it's important. It really is. Some of the ways that you find that word in the Bible, it'll say beseech, comfort, or exhort. But it means the same thing. You got to reach around somebody to comfort them. You got to reach around them to exhort them. You got to reach around them to beseech them. What's interesting is the noun part of that word is found only 5 times in the entire New Testament. That word, many of y'all are familiar with it, is parakaleos. Steve, are you good on Greek? Yeah, probably. It's used 5 times in the New Testament as the noun form. And what's interesting about that, it's only found written by one of the apostles in the entire New Testament. If I gave you a guess, what apostle would you think would be real interested in comfort? John. That's right, Sam. The Apostle John uses that word 5 times. No other apostle does it. You can find that word 4 times listed in 2 chapters. If you look in John chapter 14, starting in verse 6, and you read from there to John chapter 16 into about verse 7, you're going to find that 4 times. Now let me tell you what's going on there. You probably already know this. This is the time when the apostles were getting real close to Jesus. And Jesus had to let them know something very important. And he starts to tell them, now guys, I'm fixing to leave you. And they said, what? He said, I'm fixing to go away. And you remember, they got real upset about this. And I mean, I don't blame them. If I'd quit my job of fishing, I'd quit whatever I was doing and said, everything that I've got, my family, whatever, I'm going to leave for the cause of Christ. And then he says, I'm going to leave you. Wouldn't you be a little upset? But then he comes back and he says, but I am going to send you the Comforter, the Parakletos, the Comforter I'm going to send you. Matter of fact, he had to tell them that 4 times in the next 2 chapters to convince them of that fact, that he was going to send that to them. It's seen one more time in 1 John chapter 2 and verse 1. And when we see it there, it's got a different word, but exactly is the same thing in the Greek. And this is talking about me and you. He says this, my little children, I am writing these things to you so that you may not sin. However, if you do, we have an advocate, a comforter, a parakletos that is with the Father, and that is Jesus Christ, the righteous one. Now, John goes on to write one more book after this, and that is the book of the Revelation of Jesus Christ. It's a book we're studying right now. What do you think that book's about? Comfort. Comfort. And he's comforting people in that time frame that's fixing to have severe persecution, lose some of their family members, may die themselves. And his words of comfort is what's going to bring them through the trials. And that doesn't stop just with that church. What he would want to tell us is you as a church need to be comforting each other and bring yourself through the trials that are going to happen in your life. And you need to take your arm and bring someone to your side and comfort them. And so he finishes the book of Revelation for us, telling us the real comfort is going to happen. And tomorrow is going to be a brighter day. But for us, the brightest day is yet to come. The brightest day is going to be when Jesus comes back. And we are to encourage and comfort each of us with those words, ladies and gentlemen. Are we doing that? Did you know the Lord's coming back, kids? And when he comes back, we will be comforted if we're in Christ. Good stuff for Christians. Good stuff for Christians. For those who aren't Christians, that's not a good story. That's not the story. But for us that are Christians, we need to comfort each other encourage each other every day, because the Lord is coming back to take us home. If you have a need tonight, will you come as we stand and sing?